You already know. You already know. Most people will never experience real power. You know why? Because they don't even know what it looks like. Because they're asleep when it's being built. That's right. If you're here with me at 4 a.m., you're already ahead. So go ahead and drop a fire emoji in the chat and then come together and keep it on the hush. You hear that? Right now, the world is silent, especially on a Saturday at 4 o'clock in the morning. And that's power. Because where there's silence, there is separation. No distractions, no noise, just massive, massive, massive opportunity. Welcome to day 60, which means 60 mornings of ownership and running the system, 60 days of separation, 60 days of moving while they sleep, 60 days of proving we don't wait, we build. My beautifully blessed people, this is Raw 4, where the ones who execute get ahead before the world even wakes up. The discipline they fear fuels the strength we build. It's Saturday, and you knew I wouldn't leave you hanging because Saturday is when we kill it like we do every day. And with it being Saturday, it marks the completion of another week for us. You know, on the Y.O.U rules, Saturday closes our week. Now, simultaneously, if you haven't picked up on it, it starts a new month. It's March 1st. Therefore, as it is standard for the Raw at 4 live stream experience, it's time for us to reflect and contemplate. So we will begin today with phase 1 of our talk, which is system reset. If we're trying to run the system and not let the system run us, how do we have a system reset with mind, body, spirit, and execution? Because in this movement, we don't just enter a new day or a new week or a new month. We recalibrate for a sharper version of ourselves. We treat it like a system update. Mind, body, spirit, execution. Let's be clear, of great significance as we consider the system we are creating for ourselves, because we're creating. You are a creator. This is you. Drop it in the chat. I am a creator. We're not just reflecting, we're also contemplating. Therefore, let us remind and reinforce to ourselves reflection is about awareness. Contemplation is about elevation. Reflection, clearly, critically important in helping us acknowledge where we've been, moment to moment, maximizing our system and life experience through wisdom. Contemplation is equally and critically important for our future moments. By leveraging completed moments and accrued knowledge and wisdom, we got to use it, helping us understand what needs to be refined and elevated. I believe if you process this and think about what this means for you, we adopt this mindset and flow process, because this is a flow process, into our habits. Essentially, we reflect to acknowledge, we contemplate to refine, we execute to separate. Let's break it down. Let's think about what this means for ourselves and consider your life as we go through this. Your mind, what mental habits need to be upgraded? What limiting beliefs are still lingering? This is truth time, my beautiful people. Are you running the system, or are old thought patterns running you? Reflect and contemplate. Your body. Have we honored our physical discipline? Are you moving? Are we moving with energy and taking care of the machine that carries out our execution? Pretty important. You need your body. Spirit. Are we keeping God or creator or universe or whomever you believe in first? Are we aligned faithfully with purpose or just moving blindly and misguided? What might we be and what might you be neglecting spiritually? And then our execution. We got to be brutally honest in asking what needs to be refined, improved, or cut. You know this better than anyone. Where did we make excuses last and let ourselves off the hook over the course of these days, weeks, and last month? You know you have. We all do. I still do. There's always room to get better. So where do we need to tighten up and sharpen ourselves? That'll be a theme for today. Sharpen. We got to sharpen. As we consider these possibilities, let's make this an actionable execution challenge. Be an adult, and over the next 24 hours, write down 3 things you believe you need to refine in mind, body, spirit, and execution. Pick just one and act on it immediately. No waiting, no thinking, just action. And if you're in the chat and you can think of it right now, drop it, and drop it with confidence. If this makes it to you later and you're in the comment section, don't just stare at me. I know it's pretty to stare at me. I like staring at me too. But drop a comment, interact. The significance of our community and you being able to interact and do this together is that you might have the opportunity with your input to not just change your life, but use your changed life and how you're changing your life to impact somebody else's life. I believe that. We need each other. I certainly need you. Drop it in the chat. Drop it in the comments. My beautifully blessed people, it's Raw 4 story time. And as has become typical on this lovely, lovely, blessed Saturday morning where there is nothing but us and silence to reflect and contemplate, I'll hit you first with a personal joint, then give you a story from the book. And then quite literally, I have an analogy today that is intended to cut, right? Let me check the chat, though. Where we at in the chat? Who's with me at 4:07 a.m.? It's all right. God's calling you. God is calling you the way God has called me, the way God calls all of us. A personal story. Reflection and contemplation. I really believe in certain principles and values that I will share intimately with respect to maintaining a level of privacy. I can't tell you everything. There's some things I got to keep a little bit private between God and I. You understand? But as we are going through this, consider where you're at in this life and how this, in your life, in this life, and in your life, and how it might be applicable. We're talking everyday life, everyday grind. And I believe you're here for the same reason I'm here, which is separation and elevation, the actualization of the success of the life in the life you seek for yourself, however you see it. In that way, I really want to relate to you through the daily grind of putting in the most amount of work you can put in the direction that you are required to put in work for the success you see. I just believe this. It's part of my principles. We got to work. We got to work. We got to work to help identify who we are. We got to put in effort. Work helps quantify and qualify a lot of who we are in mind, body, and spirit, because work is very fulfilling. It just is. If you give yourself a moment to remove the emotion of what you might be getting paid, how you might be overlooked, and how it may not be working out in your current set of circumstances, just break it down fundamentally as an adult, remove the emotion and say, we got to work. So in that way, It doesn't matter who you listen to as an influence or as a symbol. They'll all tell you the same thing. You're not going to outwork me. And I believe unequivocally, unambiguously, and undoubtedly, you got to outwork the entire room in whatever room you're in. And of course, separation and elevation will put you into different rooms, will mean that you will have to work even harder as you elevate and separate. But I also believe if you but have patience, you'll build the right staminas, disciplines, habits, and processes to sustain the work required. But here's a reality as you transition into understanding maturely and as an adult in mind, body, and spirit, the emotional process, the actualization process of what needs to occur. How do we actually consider to outwork ourselves in a way that we've never outworked ourselves in order to attain the success we see for ourselves in whatever profession we seek success for ourselves? However you're doing it, from the janitor to the boardroom and everything in between, I believe in you. If you're going to clock in, my beautiful people, think about where you're at. You might be on your way to work right now to clock in. Don't just clock in and coast. Clock in to execute, separate, and elevate from the janitor to the boardroom. That is everything to how I've succeeded. I have, in my career, in my professional space, on my way to VP Comp, I've done every job in between from janitor to the boardroom respective to my career. I have. And the only thing that I've been able to do to separate myself, or the greatest thing I've done to separate myself, is in every room I was in, whether I was the janitor or now that I sit in the boardroom, I outwork everybody who is around me by outworking myself. But now there's a danger to this. As I consider and as I try to relate and as I try to give you the gift of possibility to take yourself to separation and elevation and achieve your boardroom level and whatever you're looking to achieve that gives you the boardroom, there's a danger, a real danger to you spiritually, to you in your mind, socially, and in every possible asset and outlet and space of reflection and contemplation. That when you consider the amount of effort required to achieve the level of success you're looking for in a professional space, in a workspace, that helps identify you, that realistically could become at least 1/3 of your day. If I got to outwork myself, I got to put in extra time. I got to put in extra hours. How else do you outwork yourself? How else do you outwork the room? Sometimes it does come down to, a lot of times it does come down to, I just have to be the first one in and the last one out. Consider that wherever you are today, my beautiful people, from the janitor to the boardroom, when you clock in and when you clock out. If you're clocking in today or you're clocking in tomorrow or you're waiting a Monday, be the first one in, be the last one out. If you wrap your work principles around that, then you will explode. I assure you, there is no room that can contain anyone who is willing to outwork the room. And the way you outwork the room from inception, especially when you still need to work and accrue and learn, and there's a delta between what you can actually do, because some of us right now might be limited. Be real with yourself. You might have the fortitude and the desire and the vision, but you don't have the skills yet. You get the skills by being the first one in and the last one out, because at minimum, by exposing yourself to the room, you'll start to learn what needs to be done to execute and separate, and ultimately to elevate. But let's get into the danger, because as I promote this to you, and as I encourage you, and as I don't know any other way to be successful on your way and en route to whatever it is God has for you to be successful, there's a reality. They talk about imbalance, but what happens is you balance yourself towards over inundating and oversaturating and over committing to the success you seek in the direction you seek. So on your way from janitor to boardroom, from frontline to the ivory tower, you got to balance yourself on the imbalance that comes with, I might have to put in 16-hour days. If you were looking for an easy way, a pill, another alternative to suggest that you could just suddenly become successful. If you're like me, you got to look at what you've been exposed to that offers you success. And if you start at janitor levels below the basement and you're looking to be boardroom executive level, then guess what? It's going to take time, because the reality is you weren't given the resources to start you at an elevated level. You are the one. You might be the one. I am the one that is elevating the tradition and the legacy of my family name. It's not to suggest that I was given the worst case. It's just the reality of, in the area I'm in, no one in my family has really done what I've done, from the perspective of I am essentially the godfather of business success for my family. I got to sneeze. Hold on. All right. So if you could consider even the Godfather caricature, I don't know if that's how you say it, but the character, we think Godfather when I was growing up, Michael Corleone, Al Pacino. But Al Pacino was already elevated. He didn't come in as janitor. He might have to have done some janitor work, but he was already exposed to the boardroom. How? Vito Corleone. He's the Godfather. He created an environment where Michael could walk into the boardroom. He created an environment where Michael was exposed and learning already at the top. It's not to say he didn't have to earn his stripes and he didn't have to go through the grind and go through the mud and have to really start and then be exposed to the janitor. It's just that he was exposed to the janitor already with a last name established. Yo, this dude right here, he's already going to go to the top. Which, interestingly, he had brothers and stuff in his way, right? Give me another minute. I'll be right back. I'm sorry. So in that way, think about what I'm telling you, my beautiful people. If you're in the chat, understand. Are you are you the Michael, respectively, or are you the Vito? And if you're like me and you're the Vito, and you're trying to figure out a way to knock two nickels together, well then, although Michael certainly had to put in extra hours, he was already in the boardroom. So, if you're like me, you could see the boardroom, you understood, and you knew where the keys to the boardroom were. But if you try to walk into that boardroom, it wasn't quite ready for you. So, what did you have to do? You have to outwork the room. We start by being the first one in, the last one out. Here's what this does to you, and here's why reflection and contemplation is deep. And here's what I would encourage you to consider as you're putting in the effort. It's highly likely that those of us who strive for this level of success have a massive incentive, a massive why. For me, at that point, when I transitioned from, all right, I'm just kind of clocking in, clocking out, going through the motions, into I'm gonna take over the room, I'm gonna go from janitor to boardroom. My wife got pregnant. Cliche, I know, but these are a lot of realities in life that hit us. So in that way, I knew that what I was doing was not enough. So what I got to do? I got to go get more. How do I get more? I got to put in more effort. How to put in more effort? I need more time. So imagine also, if you're like Vito, the reality of you need more time is that you have such a low bar of skills, exposure, because really, my beautiful people, if you are ever exposed to folks who have the suits, they're not that much different than you. Even with the Ivy League degrees, even with the silver spoons, even with the last name that dad gave them, the Corleone, it's just that, it's just they just have exposure that you don't quite have yet. That's really what you're looking for. The separation to the ultimate elevation is you just need exposure. The only way to get exposure when you're like me, if you're like me, think about where you're at in your life. If you're a little bit from under the basement pavement, you got to find a way out. You got to find a way to see. You got to find a way to have the sun shine on you. You got to find light. So you got to outwork the room. Now, When I talked about being balanced towards an imbalance, it got to be all about work. 16-hour days. Reflection and contemplation brought me to this reality that it is a massive sacrifice. It's a massive sacrifice for all the reasons you would think that it's a sacrifice. 1 second. So while you're sacrificing, the reality is you can start to overindulge in that you become over identified with your professional success. You begin to be so fixated on the goal. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be. You should be. Lock in. You have to, especially if you're at a very low scale in the success you seek professionally and you know you want more. None of us want to be broke like that. Let's be real. If you're here in the chat or if this makes it to you in the comment section, do you really want to be broke? I don't want to be broke. Write that in. Hit the fire emoji. I don't want to be broke. I said it to myself. I don't want to be broke. And so now you become obsessed with the only way you know how to not be broke, which is I'm in this job. I'm on this career path. I can see the boardroom. I want to get there. I want to get there. I want to get there. And at first, the pain that comes with being first one in, last one out, like anything else, becomes a habit. 16-hour days, you go from being really, really tired and crashing and need to be constantly regenerated to knowing that my body can handle this now. Whether it's caffeine, energy drinks, whatever you got to do, you figure a way out. But in this way, reflecting and contemplating, what I want to offer you is that don't lose sight of that while you're sacrificing these 16-hour days, essentially you're beginning to identify and the way you rationalize emotionally how you feel about yourself to determine, I feel great about my life. Why? Because I put in 16-hour days. And so in that way, when you're isolated and you're going down a singular path, you kind of lose sight of, I have mind, body, spirit. I have other contributions. My why that's inspiring me to put in these 16 hours, I might be neglecting it. And everything else that comes with the possibilities of life, all the sacrifices you have to make to work 16 hours, you're giving up a lot socially. So if we want to be able to rationalize and quantify and qualify success within ourselves so that we feel emotionally good about what we're doing, in other words, why else would I be making this sacrifice? It's not just the money. Yes, you want the money. The money's good. You get the money. The money's good. Get more of it. And then when you get more of it, get even more of it. Don't ever stop. Get as much as you can. The world has already proved to you there's no shortage. The way that there's no shortage of opportunities for success, there's massive opportunity for success. There's no shortage of money. They'll just print it. I promise you. Take a look. They'll print it. It's there for you. You just got to grab it. The fear that I learned that I try now to circumvent that you may not be able to see while you're doing this is a lot of the sacrifices you make to attain this level of success means you miss a lot of the moments that could mean more to you later. If you look at a lot of success stories, my beautiful people, you might be here. Consider if you're here. I said I did this because my wife got pregnant. The grind from when janitor to just mid-level before I could even have a bird's eye view of the boardroom, it went from, I got to do this. All of a sudden, 5 to 7 years passed. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a decade. And now you have 2 children. And all of a sudden, the first one's 10 and the other one is 7. And you take a look back and you say to yourself, oh, okay, I went from individual sort of contributor to now being a leader in my professional space because I went from an individual person to all of a sudden committed and married to all of a sudden I have children. But I remember everything I did here, but wow, and clearly all these other things came with me, but what have I contributed here? You hear what I'm saying? When you get so balanced to the imbalance of one lane only, you lose sight of what you're building it for. And when you lose sight of what you're building it for, you start to reflect, and there's sins of commission. I committed all these things. And here's a reality, my beautiful people. The success that you see, and as you start to get exposure, it'll indulge you with a lot of a lot of highly influential social experiences that come with success in business. The dinners, the gifts, the tickets to box seats, the events that have where you can get autographs from people who are successful in ways that you idolize it. All these things, because now you're a symbol of success in business. If I have access to a business that is worth billions of dollars and I have a budget that is multi-millions of dollars, a lot of things come with that. And they're great because you feel like you've earned it, but you sacrifice a lot of that imbalance towards, or the balance towards an imbalance. You lose, you could lose. And ultimately, what I want to be able to say to you is this. The biggest revelation for me through contemplation and reflection, what changed me to pivot and to become, I do run the system, but I have to run the system for somebody else's system because somebody else writes my check. Why I'm so adamant about doing this here and finding a way to write my own check is because I'm not going to get back time I lost with my family. And I have a Michael that I'm raising, and I have a daughter who I'm raising, that had I stayed on the path of the imbalance, the balance towards the imbalance of only seeing what my success in my career brought me, it would have been for nothing because I was breaking down the core of my family that I thought I was doing it for. And so in that way, don't not commit to overworking. But when you're not putting in the work for you and your success, find a way to reflect and contemplate the other relationships that mean a lot to you as to why you're doing this. You think you're doing it just for you. You think you're doing it because you want to be on the stage and at the podium. You'll realize as you gain some of these things, it doesn't mean quite what you thought it would. And it certainly doesn't mean anything if you're not doing it for something bigger than just you. So we reflect and contemplate to understand the sins of commission you have to live with, and they'll never leave you. That's God's promise to you. So be careful what you do. But ultimately what this comes down to, and it'll be a big conversation for a different day, because this is big to me, are the sins of omission. If you don't reflect and contemplate, what you'll find is that you'll be missing out on what you're missing out on. You hear what I'm saying to you? Think about what I'm saying and apply it to your life. Everything you're doing to try to move in one direction means you're sacrificing something else in another direction. And sins of omission leave you in two ways. If you don't get on this grind, if you're not first one in and last one out, and if you're not doing something that makes you run your own system, you'll reach an age and a point where you say, I've omitted. You don't want that in your life. You don't want it in your life. I assure you, I promise you, unequivocally, undoubtedly, you don't want sins of omission. Oh, I should have just did this. Oh, I should have just got that degree or got that certificate or asked for that promotion or switched to that job or kept on putting in more effort. I should have been the first one and the last one out. I should have acted on my thoughts. I should have acted on my dreams. You don't want that. You don't want that in your life, my beautiful people. You do not want the sins of omission in your life. But what you also don't realize while you're committing these things to make yourself better is you might omit sharing it with the people around you. If you're a husband or a wife or a father or a son or a daughter, a sister or a brother, whatever helps make you more of just a successful worker, you can omit being there and missing something that's bigger than you. My point being, for reflection, contemplation, and elevation, I believe of great significance. I offer you the possibility, think about it, that you might be becoming the Vito Corleone. You could be the godfather of your name. But if it's just you that elevates and separates, and you don't take your family with you, and you don't create it bigger than you, it'll just die with you. And that'll be a massive omission that could hit you at a time when it's really too late. Think about that and what it could mean for your life. Let's check the chat. Who's in the chat? Who's in the chat? Ooh, we fired up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm going to take about a 30-second break to gather myself, and then we're going to go into a story from the book. A story from the book, right? 30 seconds. My beautiful people, I will not leave you hanging. I will not leave you hanging. I certainly won't leave you hanging on a Saturday. We separate. We got to use our weekends, especially if you're a standard worker. You got to give yourself time. This is the best time to give yourself time when there's no other real responsibilities calling you that you have to do. So it's Saturday. If you're grinding on your Saturday, God bless. If you're not, you need to rest. Cool. If you're going through sins of omission, I don't have to be sorry for you. You'll be sorry one day. Let's get into the book. We're talking about reflecting, recalibration, and the importance and significance of it to elevating your life, my beautiful people. Let's elevate. Let's separate. The Bible, if you've read it, this happens often. But let's get really into the importance of recalibration and how God showed us the importance of recalibration. The story of Noah, which you might know, contained an ark, right? The ark was important. But this is the first time in the book where we really see sort of the theme of our struggle as people with God, universe, and faith. Clearly, at this juncture, it was identified as a potential problem. The world had become corrupt, filled with distractions, indulgence, and destruction. People lost discipline, lost their connection to God, lost their purpose. Hear the words. There's a hierarchy attributed to faith, and succinctly, it is that God comes first, because God is all, and God, therefore, is, of course, you and I and all of us. And when we lose sight of that hierarchy, as it occurs over and over historically, at least biblically, it again is what could be defined as the ultimate sin. The ultimate sin being commandment 1. You shall put no other gods before me. And when that occurs too frequently and at scale, what did God do? He reset the system. He chose Noah, a man who walked with discipline, who listened, who moved in alignment, who was centered and virtuous and intentional, while the world kept living recklessly. Noah built in silence, followed commands, orders, mind, body, spirit. And when the flood came, he didn't drown. He rose. And you're like, no shit, he had an ark. But I believe deeply that this epitomized the potential of full consciousness and somewhat Christ consciousness. This is my interpretation. And that in order to ensure you and I and we don't drown ourselves in our thoughts, in our feelings and emotions, we must rise to the top, just like the boardroom, and see from a higher vantage point. Ironically, and maybe not so, the third eye, right? As above, so below. In the same way is as below, so above. The flood wasn't just destruction. It was recalibration. It washed away everything that wasn't meant to last. I say it again. It washed away everything that wasn't meant to last. It was a reset to rebuild something stronger. That's what we're doing here. We're removing what doesn't serve us so we can rise. We are clearing the path for us to create The life only you can see for yourself, that we can see for ourselves. The ones who are still indulging, still distracted, still moving without purpose, they'll drown. They'll drown in their own lack of discipline, lack of vision, and lack of faith. Their faithlessness. But those of us who build, those of us who have faith, we rise. So here is where you ask yourself, where do you need a reset? What is your flood? And are you ready to build? My beautiful people, consider those words as we now indulge in the analogy strategy. Here's the thought, right? Here's what we call this. This analogy is the forge and the impurity burn. Think of yourself, if you would. Put yourself in imaginative thought. Like a blade being forged in fire. Watch this happen. When a sword is crafted, it starts as raw metal, filled with impurities, weak spots, and inconsistencies. Does that sound like you? Certainly is me sometimes, even still. And if you try to use it right away, it would just shatter under pressure. But the master blacksmith doesn't just polish it. He doesn't just sharpen it. He puts it in the fire. He melts away the weakness. He hammers out the imperfections. Hear it, think it, apply it. This is life. And every time the blade is heated and struck, it gets stronger, purer, more unbreakable. That is what the reset is. That's what recalibration does. You are in the fire right now. You are being shaped. Trust in God. The weak version of you is being burned away, especially if you're here at 4 being raw. You got to learn to trust and believe. You got to learn to trust and believe. Most of us, unfortunately, don't. My beautiful people, most of us can't handle the heat. We think we can. We call for it. Most of us break. Most of us break before they ever become the weapon they were meant to be. Yes, you were meant to be a weapon. God chose you to be a weapon. Believe it. Because not us. Not us. Not us. Not here. Not the Do You rules. Not Raw 4. Tell me. Most importantly, tell yourself. Are you willing to go through the fire? Are you willing to burn away the weakness? Because if you are, you won't just be strong. I promise you. I assure you. God guarantees. You will be unbreakable. Become a weapon. And the last thing for us to touch on today is super important to me personally, because I believe it's super important to us as a collective community. We need each other. And as we make an attempt to change our lives and become the system, we don't let the system run us. I won't allow it. We're not just resetting, we're preparing for separation. April 1st, a month from now, we begin the Do You Rules Raw at 4 live experience 30-day challenge. Woo! We're going to capture real, I'm going to be real with you. We're going to make this work for us. Real and actionable everyday changes we can make to our system so that we can make changes to our lives every day. Little things become big things. Let's be real. If you stay the same day over day, and for the sure, over the course of the next 30 days, especially beginning on April 1st if you join us, my beautiful people, that is a choice. It is your choice to change or not to change. So let's be clear on what's in front of us and focus on our growth. It's not April 1st yet, but it still is the start of a new month. Ask yourself this question. What do you want to prove to yourself by next month? What is your number one non-negotiable for this month? What weakness, habit, or mindset is not coming with you into April? So my beautiful people, we don't wait. I challenge you over the next 24 hours, lock in one undeniable piece of proof you will have by the end of the next month. We're in March. To show yourself you've changed. Become a weapon. And of great significance, if you believe you're strong enough for the upcoming Do You Rules Raw 4 live experience, start mentally preparing for the 30-day challenge coming in April, because I will challenge you the way I challenge myself, and we'll challenge each other. We will weaponize ourselves. My beautiful people, this Saturday, we reflect, we contemplate, we separate, we elevate. I'll leave you with this. Reflection without contemplation is just looking back. Contemplation without reflection is just getting lost in thought. We do both. We weaponize it. And that's why we separate. Tomorrow we reset. April 1st we separate. Get ready, my beautiful people, my beautiful, beautifully blessed people. You either run the system or the system runs you. Change your mind, change your life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.